Ferdinand Magellan was a Portuguese explorer who organized the Spanish expedition to the East Indies from 1519 to 1522, resulting in the first circumnavigation of the Earth, which was completed by Juan Sebastián Elcano. Magellan was born in the Portuguese town of further offers of employment after May 15, 1514. Later on in 1515, he got an employment offer as a crew member on a Portuguese ship, but rejected this. In 1517, after a quarrel with King Manuel I, who denied his persistent demands to lead an expedition to reach the Spice Islands from the east, he was allowed to leave for Spain. In Seville he befriended his countryman Diogo Barbosa and soon married the daughter of Diogo's second wife, Maria Caldera Beatriz Barbosa. They had two children, Rodrigo de Magalhães and Carlos de Magalhães, both of whom died at a young age. His wife died in Seville around 1521. Meanwhile, Magellan devoted himself to studying the most recent charts, investigating, in partnership with cosmographer Rui Falero, a gateway from the Atlantic to the South Pacific and the possibility of the Moluccas being Spanish according to the demarcation of the Treaty of Tordesillas. After several weeks in the Philippines, Magellan had converted as many as 2,200 locals to Christianity, including Rajah Humabon of Cebu and most leaders of the islands around Cebu. However, Lapu-Lapu, the leader of Mactan, resisted conversion. In order to gain the trust of Rajah Humabon, Magellan sailed to Mactan with a small force on the morning of April 27, 1521. During the resulting battle against Lapu-Lapu's troops, Magellan was struck by a bamboo spear, and later surrounded and finished off with other weapons. In the immediate aftermath of the circumnavigation, few celebrated Magellan for his accomplishments, and he was widely discredited and reviled in Spain and his native Portugal. The Portuguese regarded Magellan as a traitor for having sailed for Spain. In Spain, Magellan's reputation suffered due to the largely unflattering accounts of his actions given by the survivors of the expedition. The first news of the expedition came from the crew of the San Antonio, led by Estevão Gomes, which deserted the fleet in the Strait of Magellan and returned to Seville May 6, 1521. The deserters were put on trial, but eventually exonerated after producing a distorted version of the mutiny at St. Julian, and depicting Magellan as disloyal to the king. The expedition was assumed to have perished. The Casa de Contratación withheld Magellan's salary from his wife, Beatriz, considering the outcome of the voyage, and she was placed under house arrest with their young son on the orders of Archbishop Fonseca. The 18 survivors who eventually returned aboard the Victoria in September 1522 were also largely unfavorable to Magellan. Many, including the captain, Juan Sebastián Elcano, had participated in the mutiny at St. Julian. On the ship's return, Charles summoned Elcano to Valladolid, inviting him to bring 2 guests. He brought sailors Francisco Albo and Hernando de Bustamante, pointedly not including Antonio Pigafetta, the expedition's chronicler. Under questioning by Valladolid's mayor, the men claimed that Magellan refused to follow the king's orders, and that he unfairly favored his relatives among the crew, and disfavored the Spanish captains. One of the few survivors loyal to Magellan was Antonio Pigafetta. Though not invited to testify with Elcano, Pigafetta made his own way to Valladolid and presented Charles with a handwritten copy of his notes from the journey. He would later travel through Europe giving copies to other royals including John III of Portugal, Francis I of France, and Philippe Villiers de l'Isle. After returning to his home of Venice, Pigafetta published his diary around 1524. Scholars have come to view Pigafetta's diary as the most thorough and reliable account of the circumnavigation, and its publication helped to eventually counter the misinformation spread by Elcano and the other surviving mutineers. In an often cited passage following his description of Magellan's death in the Battle of Mactan, Pigafetta eulogizes the Captain General. Magellan's main virtues were courage and perseverance, in even the most difficult situations. For example, he bore hunger and fatigue better than all the rest of us. He was a magnificent practical seaman, who understood navigation better than all his pilots. The best proof of his genius is that he circumnavigated the world, none having preceded him. Magellan has come to be renowned for his navigational skill and tenacity. The first circumnavigation has been called the greatest sea voyage in the age of discovery, and even the most important maritime voyage ever undertaken. Appreciation of Magellan's accomplishments may have been enhanced over time by the failure of subsequent expeditions which attempted to retrace his route, beginning with the Loiza expedition in 1525. The next expedition to successfully complete a circumnavigation, led by Francis Drake, would not occur until 1580, 58 years after the return of the Victoria. Magellan named the Pacific Ocean, which was also often called the Sea of Magellan, in his honor until the 18th century, and lends his name to the Strait of Magellan. His name has also since been applied to a variety of other entities, including the Magellanic Clouds, Project Magellan, and NASA's Magellan spacecraft.